Welcome to the Healers Café, the number one show for medical practitioners and holistic healers to have heart to heart conversations about their day to day lives while sharing their expertise for improving your health and wellness. So, welcome to the Healers Cafe. And today I have with me amazing Robyn, and she's got her name for many interesting reasons, and we're going to go into it. But she has been working behind the scenes as a foresight consultant for high-level government officials, providing guidance and advice in preparation for catastrophic events. And her impressive client roster, that's in English, right? Yes, includes the royal family, government officials, Hollywood elites, and all kinds of leaders. So, and then needless to say, she's been on all kinds of, televisions and all of that. So I'm really looking forward to finding out a little bit about, well, you, this gift, and what you're seeing. So welcome, first of all.
Thank you. I love when we get to discuss all kinds of depths of healing and gifts and different modalities. It's such a beautiful thing, and people will find the way to what they need through your channel, and I appreciate that.
Mm, thank you. Well, why don't we start with how did it start for you? How did you know you had these gifts? How did it come about? What was your first sort of signs?
When I was a kid, I used to have like very wild dreams, a lot of it about catastrophic natural events.
Mhm,
I started to pick up on it because as a young kid, I would then see it on the news. I would talk about it a lot. My parents thought that maybe I was depressed or something was wrong. And
mhm,
I wasn't. I wasn't scared of those things necessarily. I just would talk about them.
mhm,
One day, though, in elementary school, I remember I was sitting in the grass and I was staring at the squirrel. I was kind of, and what I was doing looking back was kind of tapping into the squirrel. And I had this thought like, oh, there's something wrong with his vision and he's gonna fall. He can't see where those branches are. And then, like, it was about 3 to 5 seconds later, he fell.
mhm.
And then so that's when I really started to pay attention, but I did assume everybody was that way.
Right. Mhm,
It wasn't until my 20s, where I really started to seek it out. And one day I had a very prophetic dream, 3 days prior, where I watched this flash flood in Texas, and I live in Colorado. And I was watching this flash flood happen. It happened so fast that it made all these cars pile up.
mhm,
And then I zoomed in and I saw kids in the back seat. And it disturbed me because I was a young mom. I
mhm,
had just had my first child. And I was so disturbed by it. It kept me up. I just was like, why would I have a dream about this? And then I saw it on the news that it happened
mhm,
like
mhm.
3 days later. And so that's when I started having it out with God, actually, is kind of when, like, why would you show me something that I can't do anything about?
Mhm.
And then from that, I actually turned it off a little bit because I didn't want to see the bad, the ugly, the sin, the what people call darkness or evil. And then I realized I hadn't had some prophetic dreams in a long time. And then I, was inquired of God about it. And he reminded me of that day where I was having it out with him and said, "Stop showing me these things that if I can't do anything about it." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, that's right." And he said, "If you want a gift, you can't selectively choose to
Right.
only see this."
Yeah.
Right. And that's when I had to make the decision to be open and willing to see it all, the good, bad, and ugly. Right.
Mhm,
And even the darkness. And that's, through years and years of seeking it out. I've had a lot of extensive training. I'm a holistic doctor, I'm a herbologist, I'm a homeopathic, my specialty is in quantum physics.
mhm,
I've had training on my spiritual gifts. I have more than one. And quite frankly, if you have one gift, you can have them all.
mhm,
And they will show up whenever you need them. And everybody's that way. There's nothing special about me. I think every single person can develop that at the highest capacities. The only difference about me is that I seek it out. I inquire of it. I demand confirmation. Um,
Mm.
and training and development in every capacity because that's who I am and my character. I want to know what I'm made of and what I can do with everything that I have. So that's
Mm.
kind of how it started. But my career, as far as like really getting into a higher platform with higher end like clients, I was building survival communities with some really big boys in the industry. I was preparing some governments and I kind of got into that. I became like a firearm and survival instructor and all those things because for
Mm.
the things I was seeing in the future, I wanted to be trained for.
Right.
And if I was giving counsel and advice to these types of organizations, I also wanted to advise them properly and correctly.
Mhm, mhm,
And that's just good business, right?
mhm.
But 3 days prior to that really large earthquake in Japan, when that huge tsunami hit and
Yeah.
all the radiation, Um, I had some prophetic dreams 3 days prior to that and had positioned them so well, that it got noticed by CNN, and they name dropped my name,
Mm.
that's how they knew. And so that's kind of where it started, that's what led me into, like, Discovery Channel and all of this
Right.
stuff. But that's like the doom and gloom side, and I've noticed that a lot of people hyper focus on that,
Yes. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, when they wanna hear like, "Oh, what's coming? What do we gotta be prepared for?" That's great, but there's a perfect balance in that. So if
Mhm,
there's a 10-point earthquake, that means there's like a 10-point healing, a 10-point
mhm,
miracle, blessing, activation, something like that happening, and the perfect scale of things, and nobody really wanted to inquire of that. So I shifted a lot of my gifts into the healing side of things and
mhm,
started going into the healing arts more and more and more and using my gifts for that. I mean, I can do a lot of different things, but that's why I kind of transitioned out of that work.
mhm. Wow, it's fascinating, but it's interesting that you also say when people have one gift, they have others, and I think we're coming to an era that more, I mean, the veil is thinner and more people are starting to perceive more and therefore allow themselves to allow for more, right? But I also
Yes.
like when you pointed out that when you said to stop it, you ask and you shall receive it stopped.
Yeah.
So be
Yeah.
really careful what you're asking for, so
Yeah.
interesting.
Sometimes we're not even clear on what we're asking for. I
Yeah.
notice that a lot with even clients.
Hmm.
They're like, "I just wanna be successful." And I'm like, "What does that mean? What's your definition of success?" And they have no idea.
Yeah.
And it's like that with everything and asking to stop showing me this
Yeah.
and turn this off. I don't if you don't know or haven't mastered the skill set of being specific in your definitions of things, that's where your power is. Everybody just assumes, especially with God, this is the biggest thing that God is spying on us and knows our every thought.
Right.
So he knows what I mean. That one thing, if people could
Yeah.
erase that from their minds,
Hmm.
they would have a lot more detailed power in what they're asking for, and they
Hmm.
will receive it so much more faster
Hmm.
and in great detail to where they're like, "Wow, I can't make this up."
Hmm. Hmm. And I think too, there's the fear that what you're asking for is too much of the paradigm in which you belong. Therefore, one of the tricks I was told is it's not a trick. I mean, it's just a thing, but you say or more, you know, like
Yeah,
that or more is as in you leave it larger. Like let's say I'm a happy person, right? So I'll be very happy with many things. So it's very hard to define what do I really want more. I mean, anything could be good. Like if you're like a flexible, happy go lucky type of person, you may not have this a very clear thing, but you have to choose something and then open it. I think I don't know, that's how I've come to see this.
yeah. I actually have something similar where when something good happens that I enjoy, I say, show me how it gets even better than this.
Ah, interesting. Okay.
I'm always inviting better and more all the time.
Yeah.
And I think, I was a gospel teacher for like 15 years, and there's a lot of that burden of asking for too much. And
Mhm.
then also, if you are asking, you better be worthy,
Oh, yeah.
and you should be content with what you have, count your
Right.
blessings, be grateful. And
Yeah.
that type of mentality is actually very limited and very restrictive.
Yeah.
And you do not allow yourself to receive more. And so that's part of why I say statements like that.
No, that makes total sense. Yeah. So, can we go a little bit into your, without giving away any personal or secrets or whatever, but
Love secret.
in your in your work with, whether it's the royal family or it could be Hollywood too. I mean, there's now, after this last few years of, oh, I don't know, chaos, in the sense that, many people have been lost in this, have had their faith really destroyed, their trust in structures and governments, and all of this. At least they're having to question all this. What do you see, or what was your experience dealing with the royals, now that you know they're not doing too well, as far as they're
Yeah.
mostly missing? um,
Well, I'm going to probably say some things that a lot of people or might be surprised by,
mm,
because my vision, my sight, my gifts see very dimensionally, meaning I can see things like who people were before this world, why they came here, where
mm,
we're going with this.
mm,
And like that same information is very tied to how God became God.
mhm, mhm.
And so I'm looking at this as almost a three-part play,
Okay.
whereas everybody else is only looking at the middle of the play.
Mhm,
And they're missing a lot of information when they're casting a label or a judgment on something.
mhm,
Okay. But in all reality, yes, there's some horrible decisions being made and some things that could look very dark and evil. Okay. But when people are in positions of power and influence over mass amounts of people, and they start to get information like the world is not sustainable,
mhm,
um, the population of the human race is not sustainable, we have to intervene. And then they have a thought because of information like people are too stupid or too naive, they can't handle this type of information. We have to make decisions for the masses, just for the human race.
mhm, mhm,
So that's sometimes a lot of their thinking.
mhm,
And we all know that when we have trauma or we have subconscious beliefs, even if we're wrong, we are proving ourselves right.
mhm, mhm.
Okay.
Correct.
And that's why we have patterns. So even if they're 100% wrong,
Mhm.
they are collecting evidence in their subconscious minds to prove themselves right.
Yeah.
So let's just say they make a decision to release a virus for population control.
Yeah.
In their minds, they feel justified
Yeah.
because they are trying to save the world. They're trying to save the human race,
Mhm, mhm,
which you could look at as a very kind and compassionate thing. That's a hard judgment call.
mhm,
So you see how there's always two scales here happening. It's not
mhm,
always about darkness and evil. It's
mhm,
really about the individuals, about where they're at and why they're there.
mhm,
Where did this programming come from?
mhm,
Did they have the skill sets to discern? Are they connected to God? Are they seeking truth and light?
mhm,
Are they willing to see things differently? That's really the bigger issues. And they're stuck in the middle of the play versus seeing the first part of the play and the end of the play.
mhm, mhm,
So they're very limited, well, like most of the people in the world.
mhm,
So what I do is I come in and take a look at those things
mhm,
and try to find out how they got there. Same with their serial killer. You
Mhm.
know, how did this happen? When did their spirit change? When did their mind change? When did they start
Mhm.
viewing the world this way? What were they saying to themselves? What happened? And I can go in their timeline. I scan timelines like that. That's why I move my hand.
Mhm.
I can scan a timeline and see what happened, the moment it happened, what they said, and then the pattern of why they have to keep proving
Mhm.
themselves right. Right.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, um, there are an equal exchange of what people would say darkness, or I call it manipulation.
Mhm.
When anybody is removing free will and choice or agency to choose, to me, that's the definition of sin.
Mhm.
When you are trying to manipulate either for good or for bad, that's still sin. If people don't have the right to choose for themselves.
Mhm.
And so there's a reckoning happening right now because that is now off balance so dramatically. And people are starting to feel that shift
Mhm.
because people of influence are manipulating people's free will and choice
Mhm. Mhm.
on a large scale. So
Yeah.
every time they pull those triggers, you'll notice that something starts to really dramatically happen. Natural disasters to you know, viruses, and then something has to intervene, and
Mhm.
you guys just don't see the bigger picture. And
Mhm.
so I look at all those things in the future too, why certain things are taking place.
Mhm. So what are you thinking about like the child trafficking, which is now more and more exposed and has been a big part of Hollywood, as far as the adrenochrome, and all this is starting to come out. There was Pizzagate that was totally manipulated.
Started it. Mhm.
Yeah, saying, "Oh no, that's nothing," and no, and it's like, okay, now it's clear what it was.
Yeah.
um, and a lot of it has, and it involved the royals too. It's involved Parliament, involved, like, 8 million children's a lot of children gone missing. Um, so how do you see that? Is that like a collective? I mean, there's some people like Rockefeller who will talk negatively, clearly, almost evilly about I forget what he calls the people who eat for nothing. What does he call them? He has a word that was quite strong. It's escaping me right now, but he talks in terms of, yeah, they're not even worthy feeding
Like the sheep,
the sheep, but
like
it's,
us sheep, like we're the slaves. Yeah.
yeah, but there's a better word he used. I can't, anyway, it'll come back to me. It doesn't matter. But where there's clearly, it would look like intent, because I do hear what you're saying prior, that it may be part of the intent to do good and misinformation or missituation or seeing it differently. So I believe that there's flexibility for all of it. But how do you explain the the, the depth of suffering and depravity of
Okay.
all these
Let's
children?
let's have a we need to have a really deep talk about that. And this will help free some people up if they're really willing to have the ears to hear.
Mm,
Okay. And this has a lot to do with God. This has nothing to do with Christianity. Okay. This has to do with why we're here, who we were before we got here, and where we're going. And a lot to do with how God became God. So let me just break this down a little bit. Okay. Because you'll start to see that the world is perfectly fucked up.
okay.
Let's just, if we, one day I was having it out with God about these things that you're talking about. And I'm like yelling, and I'm like, where the hell are you in this? This is absolutely ridiculous. Like, what kind of God are you? You know? And I'm just infuriated by this kind of stuff sometimes. And this was like years ago. And he said, Robyn, if you will remove one thing from your belief system, this will all start to make sense for you. And I said, okay, I'm willing. What is it? And he said that God is all knowing and all seeing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay, what does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
So let's just start there. Okay. First of all, God is a title,
Mm-hmm.
just like being president of a country is a title. Okay. To receive that title, you would have to have major qualifications as a practitioner. Okay. And you would have to have a lot of experiences. So God didn't just create himself. Okay. So let me just with that little bit of information, if you were all knowing, how many experiences would you have to have?
You mean in order to
Be all knowing.
shift? No, to be all knowing. Yeah.
Just to be all knowing. If I said I am all knowing
Yeah.
about everything and
Yeah.
everyone, every type of experience.
Yeah. Then you'd have to have them all. I mean, in a sense. Mm-hmm.
Ding, ding, ding. Yes, 100% correct. Okay. So this is the qualification of
Mm-hmm.
how you receive title. And actually, by the way, to have a title of God, it's actually two beings. It's a male and a female, or masculine and feminine. It has nothing to do with sex. It has to do with power. So it's actually two becoming one and receiving the title.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of patterns in this world that you can see why. Just like a president has to be married, right? So it's a male and a female. We have a first lady and a president, right? Now, if my parents were amazing presidents,
Mm-hmm.
amazing human beings in a perfect world, and had all these experiences and these qualifications, all these things, what would I inquire to be like? I'd want to have the same type of experiences. I'd want to follow down that path and experience as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We're becoming like,
Right.
right? So that's a pathway. Now, here's where and we all know if as healers and practitioners, there's shadow work, there's light, there's darkness, there's all these things. But we've also, if we're very experienced, we start to realize that there's a play in that. There's a reason for it. There's a balance in it. Just like I can't see the beauty of the stars and the moon or how vast the universe is without the darkness of the night.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
And too much light will blind you. If I stare at the sun,
Mm-hmm.
I can lose my vision. I can permanently damage my eyes. So there's one extreme to the next, but really getting into the neutral position to see how they both are
Mm-hmm.
collaborating. Okay. So let's just say I have all these thousands of human experiences. I become all knowing. I get this title of God. That means I've endured all of them. I've been a gay man. I've been a rape victim. And let's go to the dark side. I've been a serial killer. I've had to be all these things. Because if I'm going to have all of these creations and I'm all knowing, it's just the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I look at a lot of the spirits, like when I have done work on like mass killers, people who have done mass shootings, things like that, their spirits are much more younger. It's like, have you ever noticed a child step on a butterfly?
What would your life be like if you were pain-free? If you were one of the millions who suffer from chronic pain, the thought of just one day without it may seem impossible. This is often because conventional medicine tends to fall short in the treatment of pain, opting to prescribe pills or recommend surgery rather than getting to the root cause of the problem. But if you are suffering with emotional or physical pain, there is hope. Join the founder and CEO of Bowen College, Manon Bolliger, live online for your body-mind reboot. Learn how to listen to your symptoms and get to the root cause of your pain. Plus, be trained in basic Bowen therapy moves so that you can reboot your body for optimal health. You don't have to live in pain. You can heal. Stop the pain pill cycle by visiting www.yourbodymindreboot.com to learn more and to register.
caterpillar or
Yeah.
anything
Okay.
like that. I mean, I have 5 children.
Okay.
I've had foster kids,
Mhm.
and I've seen that. Some children admire, and then some children will smash a bug
Right.
just to see what it looks like.
Mhm.
Okay. Doesn't mean anything's wrong with them, but they're curious. They want to know what it feels like. And I've asked children who've done that, like, why did you do that? Why did you kill that bug or whatever? And they're like, because I wanted to see what it would feel like or what it looked like.
Mhm.
So it's a lot like that. Like darkness and what we call evil is like young, innocent, not innocent, don't I want to use that word, but younger spirits that have not developed yet.
Mhm.
And they're starting to discern how it feels. This is not our first rodeo here.
Mhm.
You know, people can have lives upon lives. It's not reincarnation. There's a whole process happening that people just don't understand or don't have the depth of the capacity to understand. They're not even inquiring of God of these things.
Mhm.
So let's just say I'm president of a country. I have a delegation system in place. I know what's happening with my country as a whole. But I
Mhm.
also have a delegation system. I have FBI, I have senators, governors, mayors, EMTs, school systems, everything that reports back.
Mhm.
So I might not know the exact little thing about over here unless it gets reported to me. So that's where there's a break in this system where we're coming off balance, is because that delegation system isn't working properly. So God is not all knowing and seeing because he's spying and tapping into your every thought, watching you masturbate, watching all these things that you've done and thinking. He's all knowing because of experience. Now, we can call the president, we can call God at any time and report. And that's where the break in the line is. Because certain things are getting now, all this information is coming to be. The more eyes that are on it, the more information is being reported. And that's why we're getting all of the stuff being recovered, where it's getting exposed. It's because agency is being removed, free
Mhm.
will and choice is being removed. And that's where divine intervention comes in. That's why so many people are being exposed now. But it's also on the other side, part of the process. It's like getting from elementary school to college, right? We have all of these steps to get here, and we have to understand the differences of what is fruitful, what is productive, what feels good, what causes a ripple effect for good, what amplifies versus what is destructive. And we all day long have been being taught our whole lives by parents, by teachers, by mentors. They could give me advice, but how often do you actually have to experience it for you to learn?
Mhm.
Pretty much
Mhm.
always.
Mhm.
Always. I have to screw up and then I'm like, damn, I don't want to do that again. That didn't feel good. And
Mhm.
some of us are very beginners in that process. Some of us are further along than others. The homeless guy with the addiction could be so much further along than you and your spiritual exaltation. And this could be his last human experience, to become like his parents.
Mhm.
So we don't know. And a lot of people are so quick to label one thing or the other, it's good or bad or whatever. But in all reality, if I was a starving kid in Africa and my parents were brutally murdered in front of me, I knew that before I got down here. I chose this for a human experience that I needed to have so that I eventually could be all knowing.
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay. When you start to understand that, you are not looking at the world that I need to help the world. I need to change the world. I need to change this person. I need to save this person and heal this person.
Mhm.
Okay. Because they're choosing these experiences for exaltation in the
Right.
long run. Remember, that's that end of the play kind of thing,
Mhm.
right? They're wanting to be co creators too. Not everybody's at the same, not everybody wants to go all the way, but some people do, right?
Mhm.
So when you start to understand that, it makes you look at the world very differently. When people are like, "Oh, I just want to help others." That's
Mhm.
actually a low frequency,
Mhm.
because what you're saying to the world and putting out is that something's wrong and broken, when actually it's perfectly fucked up.
Perfectly fucked up. Yes. Okay. Yeah. No, I mean, I don't disagree with that part of what you're saying. I mean, I see it in a very similar way, and it makes us. It's a false sense of responsibility when you believe that um, you have more say over somebody's life than their initial choice, right? But I find it interesting when you're talking about the juxtaposition that it's because we're in a no choice or less choice way that all of this is coming to the surface,
Yeah.
right? I find that I'm trying to wrap my head around um, that part of it specifically. I'm not
Yeah,
sure
there
I
was,
get that.
and with why this was going on for so long is because the people involved in this actually have spiritual intelligence. And that's why it was so underground and so undercover that it actually it wasn't being reported. And
Okay.
so now that it's being reported, people are praying about it on mass scales. They're calling upon all this intervention. That's
Okay.
why this reckoning is starting to happen.
I see.
So
Mhm.
this is where I was saying the specifics matter.
Right. Okay.
Okay. It would actually be better and more powerful for those that are praying or meditating or trying to, stop this,
Mhm.
to really set the intentions of specifics for it. Like, it would be more better to go, I am actually asking for all of those that are participating in sex trafficking of children in Colorado
Mhm. Mhm.
for them to have a great awakening, that they have so much guilt that they stop this immediately, that they
Mhm.
can't stand it. I want them to see all the darkness around them, that it freaks them out so much that they stop. They change their ways immediately. I ask for all of those kids to be guided, to know how to get away, to have brave, to strength.
Mhm.
Give
Mhm.
them supernatural strength that they can run and
Mhm.
push and fight. Let
Mhm.
them all unite together so that they can fight the people that are keeping them bound, that
Mhm.
they war together, lead them, guide them, send them an army of unseen supernatural power.
Mhm.
Do you see how specific that is?
Yeah. Mhm. Mhm.
Getting chills just even thinking
Yeah.
about that.
Mhm. Mhm.
Versus, God, please just put the stop to this.
Right. Yeah. Mhm.
Very, very different.
Then it has a definitely a different energy.
It
Yeah.
does.
Mhm.
It's as big or as little, the other side of something little, like if my daughter's like, oh, I feel so bad for my friend.
Mhm.
He has an addiction and he just relapsed, and I'm like, "Well, why are you feeling bad for him?" And she's like, it's got to be so tough and it's so hard and I just feel so bad for him." And I said, "Well, stop. You're weakening him by doing that.
Mhm. Mhm.
You're sending him the same confirmation in that subconscious brain.
Right. 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 True.
Instead, send him power. Even
Mhm.
if it's just in your mind or in your prayer, in your intention,
Mhm.
you could just see him and just say, "You know what? You're strong. You're powerful. You're going to overcome this. You can do this." I
Mhm.
ask that you're blessed. I ask that your mind is done with this addiction. I ask that everything gets sent to you, that you are going to overcome this and be powerful and healthy in your mind, body, and spirit. Very,
Mhm.
very different energy.
Mhm.
We're
Yeah.
just not utilizing it, or we're not
No.
tapping into it. We're not collaborating in that either, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
We just feel
Well,
like, God dang it, all this is just horrible. It's so big and so everything. Like, what can we do about it? Right.
mhm.
And that's another really low
Defeating.
frequency.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Well, it's funny because my own journey with God in that sense, I was not religious, or I think there was lip service played to, the Catholicism and doing the right things and getting confessed and all that business. But I feel very spiritual, very connected. But I can't say that it's, I've read in all kinds of different, religions, all different gods and entities that one, um, can admire or learn from, or lessons they've had, or teachings they're giving, etc. But it's like, in the end, it's really, it feels as if it's truly within. It's within and without. It's much different than, I think, how I was, trained. And it's funny in watching what's happening these days. And I've gone down since I lost my right to practice. I'm in Canada, and in Canada, especially in British Columbia, they put out some interesting rules that if you weren't interested in taking the bioweapon, then you really couldn't speak against it and you couldn't practice. So so after 30 years of practice as a naturopath, I had to put that aside. And it called a lot of things into question for me, but also gave me time to deep dive. And one of the things that I've been like, and it's funny because I'm sure a lot of people who hear like the Q movement or the Alliance, or and they're very much a force of really believing in God in the way that I see it. It's not, it has that energy for, for good, but it's all from within. It's truly an awakening. And I found this really positive for humankind, and I don't know if I'm in one rabbit hole that eventually I'll get out, or whether there really is this awakening, but I feel extremely thrilled about what I see coming. And when I was a child, I had visions, catastrophic natural visions, as well. And I was very careful. I knew not to go onto that airplane. I've trusted myself. I lost it for a while in between,
Yeah.
but now I feel like it's a time period where this is all flourishing, and I see very positively what's happening to humankind. And it's I don't know, how could you comment a bit on that? How do you see the future now,
I
the present future?
yeah. Um, there's a reason why in the scriptures it says the great and dreadful day, but actually the older translations said the great or dreadful day.
Mm,
And it will be dreadful for some and great for us.
mhm, mhm,
And we noticed, there's been a divide for a long time, way longer than people realize, but we really started to acknowledge the divide, like with COVID. It's interesting. I had a vision about 2 weeks before COVID happened. Um, and I saw it affecting the whole entire world. And I never had a vision like that.
mm, mhm,
And usually it's just like one little area here and there. So I saw this small earthquake in Utah, and then I saw this something affecting the whole entire world. Like the whole world was shook. And so I texted all of my students and my clients because I always warn them ahead of time. I said, hey, we're about to have this small earthquake in Utah, and then something's going to happen where it affects the whole entire world.
mhm,
And they said, no, Robyn, we're not feeling it. It's not time, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay. And then I think it was 5 days, there was that earthquake in Utah in 2020, which was 6.9 in
mhm,
Salt Lake. And then Angel Moroni on the temple, his trumpet fell. That was one of the only damages
mhm,
to their major temple. So
mhm,
the trumpet falls, and then COVID's 2 weeks later. The whole world just shut down like that, right? And I'm like, okay. And so that's when we really started to notice this divide, right?
mhm,
And that divide was actually very divinely given. It was when people started to question everything, question
mhm.
themselves, their government, their neighbors,
Yeah.
doctors, everything. We had to, and what's interesting is where they started in the beginning in their thinking. is a lot of them are very dramatically different now. You
Yes.
know, I've had 4 clients this week for people with vaccination injuries that 100% believed in vaccinations.
Yeah.
And they were very like liberal, very like all for it, you know, mask wearers, all this. And now they are 100% the opposite side.
Mm-hmm.
So all of this is taking place so that we can get to a mental and a spiritual place where we're seeking and asking, we're questioning.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then that's where that divide is taking place, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, there's a lot of very much beautiful things taking place,
Mm-hmm.
like you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when and why it's going to be a great day for them. But the tribulations that are coming
Mm-hmm.
are on a very large scale because, like I said, manipulation has taken place. It went off key.
Mm-hmm.
Um, People have had choices to turn it around and they decided to use it to their advantage. Governments use remote viewers like me.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you're a
They
remote
also,
viewer. Uh,
yeah,
yeah.
I know about these events.
Mm-hmm.
They know about these events.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some of them are using it to their advantage for
Mm-hmm.
more greed, more power, more
Yeah.
position. Governments have portrayed their countries,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
and there are others who know about these events who are trying to do very, very good things
Mm-hmm.
and on a very large scale too, right? Like organizations you're talking about. And it's not about political parties anymore. It's not about who's right or wrong. It's about people looking and seeing who has more truth and light, who
Mm-hmm.
is willing to allow more free will and agency,
Mm-hmm.
or who's going to force and manipulate and lie. That's where we should really be discerning like what we're voting for, what we're looking into.
Mm-hmm.
So I can speak about some of the events and give you guys a couple dominoes to look
Sure.
for
Mm-hmm.
without trying to freak people out. Um,
And yeah, and I just want to mention we do have only about 5 minutes because I have somebody else, but I'd love you to end with that and not to make you have to do
no
it too
problem.
short, but
And we could always do another show about this
actually,
stuff
I'd
on the
love to.
healing
I'd
because
love
there's
to
a whole
on
section of the
healing,
miracles of
especially. I'd love.
healing.
Yeah.
Yeah, the healing what's coming. And a lot of the healers that are going to be watching your show are such a big part of this, of what's coming.
Yeah.
They have no idea on a mass scale of the
Yeah.
awakening they're going to have and using their gifts, their skill sets. They're going to be some of the most wealthiest people in the world.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it's a different type of wealth.
Yes.
So, one of the things I would say to everybody that's looking into this, there is a new virus that's coming,
Mm.
and this virus is legit. I'm not going to go into if it's man made or natural because there's actually 2 viruses that are coming, and one is natural and one is not. And because that is being triggered, there will be another divide that takes place, but these divides are taking place in earthquakes. The
Mm.
first one will be in Utah, and it will be a catastrophic earthquake. There are many, many reasons why Utah, and I could go into that on a whole nother podcast. But that's almost a divide because foreign troops come in to aid to the United States,
Mhm.
and it actually creates a barrier. It's another divine intervention because they're bringing in a different virus. And the only reason I'm telling you guys this is because it's one of the major dominoes. There's a bunch of other little dominoes that I see. Like I see some missiles being launched from Germany to Russia over a large mass of water, and it's at nighttime. That's another cue. But I think that happens either right before the earthquake or right around the same time.
Mhm.
But
And
the
what's the
earthquake in
timing?
Utah,
What's the
what's
time
that?
of the earthquake in Utah?
So the timelines get shifted depending on the people that are of an influence making those decisions and calling those triggers.
Right. Yeah.
But I can tell you this, that it happens in fall on a
Okay.
sunny day,
Mhm.
first thing in the morning on a Monday or a Wednesday morning.
Mhm. Okay.
So this is one of the biggest cues that I could tell people. When that event happens, that's when you know that one thing. That's when you really got to dig deep. That's when you need to be prepared spiritually. That's when you really want to hone in on your healing capabilities, your skill sets, any commodities. Be ahead of what everybody else. Don't wait until something else happens, because we know with COVID, like I told my clients, when COVID was happening, I told them, this is practice.
Mm.
This is for you to learn. See how people are behaving. See how if you can trust your neighbors. See who is a healer and a giver. See how the masses are acting at the grocery stores. See who is your tribe of people here. And that was practice, and now the next one is not going to be practice. One of the things that God told me years ago when he was showing me this earthquake, he said that we were two major events away from this earthquake. And he said that people are always trying to pray things away. And that's not where power is, because it's already here and it's already happening. What they should be praying for is that the first, second, and third waves of events are strong enough and powerful enough that people have learned and changed and been prepared.
Mhm.
They've gained strength. They've united with their families, because tragedy makes us do that sometimes,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? So it's that divide, right?
Mhm.
So that when the fourth and fifth waves of events come, they will be able to withstand.
Mhm. Mhm.
So when people are like, "Oh, pray for Oklahoma, with the
Mhm.
tornado," I'm like, it's already happened.
Mhm. Right.
So I pray that it was traumatic enough
Mhm.
that it prepares them for what's coming next.
Mhm. Mm.
This is why our healing work, our strength, our power, our skill sets are the most valuable commodity we can ever have.
Mhm.
It's above riches, it's above gold and food and all of these things.
Mhm. Yeah.
And the time has come to step into your truth and your power and to seek out what you're made of and why you're here.
Mhm. Well, it's a strange place to end, but it means we need a sequel. Eh? So I would love to be in touch with you, and let's focus on the healing part, because I think the timing is pretty crucial. So
Yes.
thank you
It's
so
a
much for your time.
great time,
Yeah.
great dispensation of time to be in for all of us. So
Mm. Well, thanks very much for sharing all that with us.
I hope that it made sense. And we talked about some deep things without
Mm.
getting too explanation into it. So
Yes.
if your viewers ever have some questions or, things that they want to go in deeper, just let me know.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for joining us at the Healers Café. If you haven't already done so, please like, comment, and subscribe with notifications on, as I post a new podcast every Wednesday with tons of useful information and tips for natural healing that you won't want to miss.